Hi, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to episode number 48 of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. I'm your host, Joe Laney Pavlon. Alongside with me tonight, I have my colleagues, Justin Hebert and Daniel Ford. We're going to cover the NASCAR races in Fontana, California at the Auto Club Speedway, as well as preview some of the upcoming races that will happen at Phoenix, as well as talk about some of the headlines this week that include just today some interesting news about the new 2021 Cup car. But there was a race this weekend, so let's without further ado get started on that. So the NASCAR Cup Series had their third race on their 36 race tour at the Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California, the 2-mile oval that was built in the 90s, won by the team that won the first race in 1997, that being Hendrick Motorsports, and
With
the
Jeff
driver
Gordon.
getting his second career win, that being Alex Bowman from Tucson, Arizona. Alex Bowman had a great performance, a fast car all weekend long. What brought him to victory lane, Justin?
I think it was the fast car. Like, he unloaded really fast. Like, he unloaded really fast was a thing. He was fastest in first practice. And second practice, which is like, okay, he qualified third. But like that number 88 car he drove, the thing about that car he drove, like, about it was just like they had a good setup. And the pit crew, they really did good with his pit stops, and like that car, like, even if it would fall back on the restarts, they would get better and better. Like, they were good on the short run and the long run, which is a good thing.
Right. Not only did they lead the most laps, they led um, over half the race plus an extra 10 laps. Alex Bowman won stage one. He led 110 laps and started third for his second career win. Let's go down the top 10. Finishing second place was
Joseph,
the winner from last year.
I wanted to
Kyle
say
Busch.
I wanted to take a little time to think about to tell you guys about what how Bowman did. You know, he did really good on the restarts. You know, every time you see him when like after a restart, he just be up there flying with the top four, top five guys, and then just pulling away at the end. What a dominant performance! Greg Ives was on his game yesterday, and he just pulled it out of the box and just made it happen.
A very impressive run. But yeah, let's go back down to the top 10 list. So Kyle Busch finished second. He won the race last year. Started 17th, didn't lead a lap, and it's a very unlike Kyle Busch race. Usually, when he finishes in the top five, he's either led the most laps and just lost, or just couldn't pass at all. But same with Kurt
Or
Busch.
better yet, in victory lane.
Exactly. Kurt Busch finished third, and just like Kyle, he didn't get any laps, but he started fourth. So maybe for Kurt was up front for a while.
Yeah.
He fell back during the middle of the race and came back up to get third. Chase Elliott finished fourth after starting 13th. Brad Keselowski, who won the race in 2015, led 6 laps from 15th on the grid for a 5th place finish. Denny Hamlin had a very interesting day yesterday. Started 28th, finished 6th. Jimmy Johnson, who was man of the weekend headlines in his final Cup Series race at California Speedway, led 10 laps, started second and finished 7th. A great run for him. Very solid performance by Jimmy Johnson. And I have a fun fact that I learned yesterday. He has finished every single lap he has ran in a Cup car at Fontana.
He's never been a lap down at that track in a Cup car, which
It's an impressive record.
Yup.
One you couldn't do even if he tried. It just has to happen by itself. That's a kind of record of a 7-time champion. And I think he's a 6-time winner at Auto Club. So the winning.
Yeah, he is a 6-time winner at Auto
That's the
Club.
record of a 6-time winner at this track.
Yes.
Moving down the list, Eric Almirola had a very solid run. Finished 8th after starting 6th. 9th place, Kevin Harvick. And then Harvick, that's his home track. He's from Bakersfield. Started at 5th. And Eric Jones, who started an abysmal 29th, managed to get a top 10 out of that. Great run. He got top 10 finish for Eric Jones. And here's the notables I've listed. Tyler Reddick, rookie of the race. Started 19th, finished 11th. Martin Truex Jr. finished 14th. He had a very struggling car, but managed to lead 3 laps and started dead last in 38th after a grid penalty during pre-qualifying inspection. William Byron finished 15th, led a lap, started 21st. Ryan Blaney finished 19th after a tire issue. He led stage 2, led 54 laps, started 16th. He had a really good car there. We'll get into Blaney in a minute. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. finished 20th after leading 6 laps. He started 10th. Kyle Larson finished 21st after starting 9th. And Clint Boyer, the pole sitter, led 10 laps from first on the grid. He finished 23rd. Let's get into Ryan Blaney. What went wrong?
I heard.
I think since the track is like super, super outdated and the fact that it eats the tires so quickly, and Blaney's just one of those guys that got caught up in that position, and then he has like a right rear tire going down, and then it just cost him that race.
Yeah, and also about the tire, it was called cording. Like, you saw the strings of the tire.
Yeah.
Like, it was bad because he pushed the car to try to catch the 88.
He pushed it a little too hard, but you can't go down without trying, Yep.
And Bowman had a scares too late in the race with that last pit stop. Tire ready to shred and go down. He pitted just in time.
Yep, and I'm glad he did, and he had that Alex Bowman, if he would have pushed it way too hard, he could have had tire issues, but Blaney was catching at one point a little bit, but then Blaney pushed it way too hard and noticed, so he backed off. And then he knew that it was worse. He did want to bring out a caution, which he didn't want.
No, and Blaney, if he did spin and hit something, it would not have been a 19th place finish. It would have been maybe 30 something.
Yeah, so he didn't want to.
After a performance like that, I'd pick a 19th place finish over that.
Yeah, I don't want to wreck a car if I'm running up front. Yeah.
Either way, it's a shame because he had a chance. That's a car that should have finished in the top 5. Let's get into the Cup Series point standings as we are 3 races in the books. So Ryan Blaney has an 11-point lead over teammate Joey Logano, who's sitting in second. Alex Bowman is sitting third, tied with Kevin Harvick. They each have 110 points claimed. Jimmy Johnson is 5th in the championship standings with 106 points claimed, while teammate Chase Elliott is -1 behind Jimmy Johnson at 105 points. Denny Hamlin, the Daytona 500 winner, is 7th with 94 points claimed. Matt DiBenedetto remains in the top 10 in the championship standings with 87 points claimed. And Kyle Larson is 9th. He has 86 points in the bag. And Eric Almirola with 84 points claimed is 10th in the championship standings. Next race will be the Phoenix 500 kilometers this weekend for round 4 of the 36 race season. We'll talk about Phoenix
kilometers.
We'll talk about Phoenix later. Yeah, it's a 500K. Later in the podcast because we have an Xfinity race to talk about. And that was an interesting one to say the least because we saw a lot of shuffling, crazy restarts, and in the end, a first-time winner for the Auto Club 300. It was round 3 of their 33-race season. Harrison Burton, the second-generation driver, son of Jeff Burton, and nephew of the Daytona 500 champion Ward, scored his first win in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He led 40 laps, started second, and finishing second was Riley Herbst, who started fifth and his career best finish. Austin Cindric started seventh, finished third. Ryan Sieg, very solid run for him. He finished fourth, started eighth. Justin Haley led 3 laps, started ninth, finished fifth. Daniel Hemrick, we're not there yet. Anthony Alfredo in his series debut. And if you're watching, Anthony, shout out to you. 6th place run from 13th on the grid. And yes, we've had Anthony on the Bottle Up radio show, which is syndicated through World Racing Media. So always check out Bottle Up on Twitter. He releases new content every week. 7th place, Daniel Hemrick led 10 laps, started 4th. Ross Chastain finished 8th after leading 4 laps, started 6th. Jeremy Clements finished 9th after starting 11th, and Josh Williams finished 10th after starting 25th. Yeah. And here are the notables that I mentioned. Justin Allgaier led 3 laps. I don't know why. Led 3 laps, started 10th, finished 12th. Michael Annett led 1 lap, finished 17th. He started 14th. Chase Briscoe finished 19th. He led 16 laps, started 3rd. And Brandon Jones finished 30th after contact. He won Stage 1, Stage 2, and led 73 laps from the pole position.
That really sucks for Brandon Jones. Like, the reason he got the tire rub, he got forced in the wall. Hemrick turned into him, got on the wall, because Hemrick wanted to give room to the car on the inside of him. So he literally, instead of staying straight, he turned right to give the car.
Yeah, at this point, he really had nowhere to go.
Yeah,
they all ran out of racetrack.
And Chase Briscoe, the reason he finished not that good, he was second, hit the wall a couple times, and he hit the wall last time, and it cut the right rear, and he spun off turn 4 with 25 laps to go. Yeah.
So that's very interesting. You know, you think you have a car that's capable to be in the top 10 or top 5, for example, maybe for Chase Briscoe.
Yeah.
But a little issue, and this goes with Daniel Hemrick, or Noah Gragson, or Justin Allgaier, is enough to take you out of the race. And for Brandon Jones, in my opinion, this was his best performance that I've seen him in this series, surpassing his victory at Kansas from last year,
Brandon
in my
Jones,
opinion.
73 laps led. And it was a 150 lap race. He did so good there in those stages. Like, people say, oh, he has no talent. Well, you saw what he did. He just got put in the wall by Daniel Hemrick, which gave him...
That was a quality run by Brandon Jones. Let's get into the championship standings now. So, Harrison Burton, not only did he win that race, but now he takes the points lead. 10 points over Chase Briscoe. So Harrison Burton's at 136 points, while Chase Briscoe's at 126 points. Austin Cindric sits 3rd in the championship with 118 points over Ryan Sieg in 4th with 112 points claimed. Justin Haley's 5th with 105 points. 6th place is Brandon Jones with 103. Those stage points definitely helped.
Yep.
Keep him up there. Ross Chastain is 7th with 100 points. Michael Annett is 8th with 99 points claimed. Noah Gragson and Justin Allgaier are tied, so they're 9th and 10th with 98 points claimed. Their next race will be this weekend for the Phoenix 200-mile event for round 4 of 33. We'll be talking about that race later in the podcast as well. So those were really the 2 main events that we have. But we did have some other races in the others category, so we'll get into them. Starting with the Monster Energy Supercross season. They ran a race at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, home of the Atlanta Falcons, for round 9 of 17. And Ken Roczen had a clutch performance to score the win over Justin Barcia. So Roczen in the Honda, Barcia in the Yamaha. Then 3rd place, we had Cooper Webb KTM, Eli Tomac in the Kawasaki, and Duvals in the KTM, finishing 5th.
Yeah, I don't.
Standing.
Yeah, very outstanding. I know I wasn't there to watch the race, but I heard Ken Roxon put on an absolute clinic on everybody in Atlanta. That was definitely amazing, and that also puts him back into the points lead.
Tied.
Where Eli Tomac. Yeah, they're tied. He's tied with Eli Tomac.
Right there, 200 points each, and then third place is. I think it's going to be just those two battling for the title because Justin Marshall's at 177 points claim. He's 23 points behind first and second, which are tied. Then Cooper Webb is fourth, 176 points, and Jason Anderson is fifth at 151 points. Their next race is this weekend at the Daytona International Speedway for round 10 of 17. That's always a quality race to watch. If you're new into Supercross, I highly suggest you check out the Daytona race.
If you could get the race.
So, also this weekend we had Formula E for round 5 of 13 at Marrakesh, Morocco for the Marrakesh E-Prix. Antonio Felix da Costa, who got the extra points for scoring pole position, won the race over Max Günther. Second, he had the extra points from the group stage. Jean-Eric Verne finished third. Sebastian Buemi fourth, and Eduardo Mortara finished in fifth. The standings look like this. Antonio Felix da Costa is in the championship lead. He has 67 points claimed over Mitch Evans, 67 points over 56 points, which is Mitch Evans. And then Alexander Sims is third with 46 points. Max Günther is fourth with 44 points. And Lucas deGrassi is fifth with 38 points claimed. The Constructors' Championship looks like this. Diaz Techeetah is first with 98 points claimed. Second place is BMW I Andretti Motorsport. They have 90 points claimed, so it's an 8-point difference. Panasonic Jaguar Racing has 66 points in the season. They are third in the standings. Fourth place is Nissan E-Dam with 57 points. And fifth place is Mercedes-Benz EQ Formula E team with 56 points. Next race was going to be in 2 weeks from now in Sanya, which is the Sanya E-Prix in China. However, due to the outbreak of the coronavirus, it has been postponed, meaning that April 4th will be the next race in Rome for round 6 of 13.
Also, I want to just tell you about Formula E. There's only one constructors with no points, which is the Neo FE33 team.
Shows you how competitive the Formula E championship is.
Yeah, Geox Dragon only has 2 points. Guess who got those 2 points?
Oh,
Brendan Hartley.
Right, and it's a tight championship. I mean,
yeah,
I think Formula E is. It's definitely going to put on. I think all the races are competitive. There's such a wild variety of drivers who have a shot to win the race on a weekly basis.
Alexander Sims finished last. His car died on the start-finish line. Coming towards the final lap, his car died on him. He used too much power, and he finished 24th, which really sucked for him. So yeah.
Right. So there's that. Formula E gets a break, a longer break, and unfortunately for the constructors leader, DS Techeetah, they're a Chinese team, they're not going to be able to have that home race in Sanya. Yeah, it's not canceled, but it's postponed. There's a difference.
Yeah.
But if it's back on the schedule, maybe later in the calendar year, then it'll be back to a 14 race. It'll be back to a 14 race championship. So let's get into the races that we'll be previewing this weekend. And just like last week, we're only going to be talking about NASCAR as for our race previews for the Phoenix 500 kilometers. That's the Cup Series, round 4 of their 36 race season. And that is an interesting race. You know, the spring race at Phoenix has always been a perplexive one. last year's winners was Kyle Busch in the spring and Denny Hamlin in last fall. Yeah, Joe Senna Maniego says Formula E is probably the most competitive series out of the major motorsport series. I absolutely agree.
It is actually competitive.
I agree with that.
You see
Yeah.
those moves they're making for positions, and the points are really tight. That's the thing. Yeah, there's also a 12-hour VIR. There's also the 12 hours of VIR, which is Champ Car Endurance Series. So
Yeah,
we
we'll
still
take it
have-
one step at a time. Let's go back to the Phoenix, though. Last year's winners was Kyle Busch in the spring and Denny Hamlin
But
in the fall. It was a clean sweep for Joe Gibbs Racing.
but
The-
there's difference now. I was about to say, but the cars are different now. So
Right.
we
The
don't
first
know.
race was back in 1988 with Alan Kulwicki and his famous win, which actually created the Polish victory lap. So if thankfully we have what is called YouTube these days, and with modern technology, you can watch virtually anything.
Yeah.
So go watch that race. It's a classic. Most wins. Every single driver was to be in this race that is on this list, except for one, and we'll get to that. Kevin Harvick has that with 9 victories. He's king of Phoenix. Jimmy Johnson was king of Phoenix with the rumble strips on the dog leg,
Yeah,
which was
back
then the
then.
backstretch. He has 4 wins. Kyle Busch scored 3 victories, including his second career win. And last year, Denny Hamlin has 2 wins at Phoenix, including last year. And Ryan Newman has 2 wins. He'll be absent this weekend. So everybody on that list was going to be in the race, of course, unfortunately, due to the circumstances of Ryan Newman. Maybe that will happen later this year. Most wins by team, just like for the most wins by driver, they are all active. Stuart Haas Racing with 5. Fourth on that list is Hendrick Motorsports. And this is just for the spring, mind you. So the most driver wins is overall, but for the most teams win, this is just for the spring. Stuart Haas Racing with 5. Hendrick Motorsports with 4. And these 3 teams have 2 wins apiece. Roush Fenway Racing, Richard Childress Racing, and Joe Gibbs Racing. For the spring race, most make victories. Chevy leads that with 10 wins. Ford with 3. Toyota with 2.
Wow, 10 to that's a big gap for Chevrolet over. Wow, that's
Right. So where do we go from here?
Oof. That is hard. Like Phoenix, but like with the Phoenix, with the restarts, how bad. With the old restarts, you could only go 2 wide on the front straightaway. These
Yeah.
restarts, yeah.
You need the
just
tires
go
here.
absolutely crazy on that dog leg.
Yup.
You need the right tires. I think tires are more important than people actually, think they are.
I've seen right rear rotor. I've seen rotors break on cars. Remember Chris Buescher in 2017? His right rear rotor broke and he went in the safer barrier and caught the safer barrier on fire
Yeah, I do remember that.
in 2017.
Brakes will be put to the test here, I've noticed.
Yes, you have to brake and remember.
Some guys will be shifting
Down.
from 3rd to 4th gear. Some will have a setup that keeps their car in 4th gear. So it's kind of like Poconos with the old package that we had years ago, where some drivers would say, okay, we're gonna downshift to 3rd in this corner, but we'll go up to 4th here. And mind you, this setup's gonna be completely different next year with when we'll get more in the 2021 car.
Yeah,
But-
because the 2021 car is gonna be 5 years now instead of
Right.
4.
So that's for another discussion. But I think what we do know, and of course they tweaked the package for the shorter tracks. I think, and this is actually the first race with that package.
Yep.
So all we can do is look at the drivers that had the success at Phoenix, and of course Kevin Harvick's the first one to come to mind here.
Yeah, but it's going to be different with that package. Nobody's used to that. They have to get used to the car.
Right, and nobody has won besides Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin on the new layout from that began in the fall of 2018.
But the thing is, even if they won on that configuration, it's the car itself. It's
Right.
gonna drive different. It's not gonna.
I'd say it's not the configuration of where the start finish line is. I'd say only restarts have and pit stops have an impact on that. But really, post 2011 Phoenix, when they removed the rumble strip and the grass and the dogleg, it's turned into the racing surface.
Yeah, I remember.
So people are actually using the line down there. And of course, when that happened for the first time in 2011, everyone was like, "Are you crazy?"
Well, remember the first time, the first race
Yeah.
in 2011 when there was the grass, and on the back straightaway there, we had the big one on the back straightaway at Phoenix on lap 67 with Brian Vickers.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was interesting. And we do have some pretty big crashes. I remember 2018, there was one involving Chase Elliott,
Kurt Busch.
Denny Hamlin. Like, that's just an example,
And
of
let's not forget 2012.
Oh yeah, on the
at the
front
finish. And
Oh my!
the with
was
Lincoln
absolute-
Oil out there and just everyone going haywire. That was back when the start finish line was on now the backstretch.
Yes.
And Kevin Harvick has one of 9 victories there. Actually, I don't even know which his first one at Phoenix was. I think it was on his back.
Yeah, the Harvick is.
I think Kevin Harvick is
2012 was the craziest of all the.
It was a
Kevin
crazy-
Harvick is going to win the race. That's my prediction.
Yes.
Let me
yes.
hear yours.
That is definitely. I'm on the same page as you, Joseph. Kevin Harvick. I got Kevin Harvick winning his 10th race at Phoenix.
Okay. This is kind of hard.
One eternity later. Who do you got?
Ooh, this.
Is it someone in HMS?
I'm thinking.
Well, Danny, let me hear your pick. Well,
Yeah, I told you my pick, Joseph.
Kevin Harvick. I didn't know why I
Yeah.
forgot about that. Maybe it's just short-term memory loss.
Yeah, it's fine.
I don't even.
It's okay.
It's fine. I probably would have thought he would pick Harvick. Anyways,
Okay. Got my pick.
Which is
This driver. He has won at Phoenix before. This driver, let me just go pull up. This driver is not a bad driver. This he's done really good in his career. He might have maybe he has the most champions of any active driver. He might, I don't know yet.
okay, I know where you're going with this.
I know where you're going with this.
There's only one driver that has that.
Yes, 7 championships.
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, that's my pick.
You
Jimmy
spilled the
Johnson.
beans. You didn't spill the beans. You dropped the beans in the.
Yeah, he
and
dropped
the
one of the
plastic
beans.
that broke on the floor.
Yeah.
I got Jimmy Johnson. the 48.
See, we need multiple champions in the Cup Series so that it can be harder to find out who you're talking about.
Yeah, I said the most, which
Right.
started-
Kyle Busch is the only driver besides Jimmy Johnson who is active in the Cup Series that has more than one championship.
Harvick and Harvick Keselowski and Kurt
Truex.
Busch. And
Kurt
Truex.
Busch.
And they have one. The others have none yet. which-
Right.
No, I know Quinn Houff is not winning a championship. That's not gonna happen
Oh
with
my
Starcom.
I like how you go immediately to Quinn Houff.
I don't.
Starcom Racing. Okay.
He's,
Well, let's get into the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So this is the Phoenix 200 mile event. This is their 4th round of the 33 race season. Last year, they had 2 races. Kyle Busch won in the spring. Justin Allgaier won in the fall. The first race was in 1999. Jeff Gordon took the win. And who has the most victories by far? Kyle Busch with 11. Carl Edwards sits with 4 wins. Greg Biffle has 3, while Justin Allgaier, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano have 2 victories at Phoenix. Now, most team wins for the spring race at this track is Joe Gibbs Racing with 7, while Richard Childress Racing has 3, and Penske sits there with 2. Most make wins for the spring race at Phoenix, Toyota with 7, and Chevy and Ford have 4 wins apiece. Who's going to win this race?
Ooh, that is hard.
I think Toyota is gonna get their eighth win at Phoenix with. Wait, I'm gonna have to say Harrison Burton again. I think he might get 2 in a row.
You come from your first win. You win a race of any kind, you have extra energy for that next race.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, this is trying to think. Ooh, let me just check. I'm gonna go check something. Just looking at it. No, not him.
Did you make your pick yet? Justin?
I'm just checking because.
I'm going to go with my pick. It's probably an easy one. He won the race last year in the spring. He has 11 wins at this track. Making his debut, yes, Kyle Busch.
Not so fast, Joseph.
Oh, what?
My pick. This guy's battled with Kyle Busch so many times for wins. Brad Keselowski will win in the number 12.
This is going to be a treat on Saturday. It's going to be an awesome race. I think we're going to have a lot of entertainment out there. A race that makes me go back but in the series was 2014 in the fall when Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski had a great battle. And then the caution came out. Looked like Busch had it in the bag, right? Nope. Keselowski took it away from him on the final green-white checker restart.
And sorry, Ian, that me and Joseph picked Cup driver. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, that's Ian Perez 48. Go ahead, give him a subscribe if you haven't.
Shameless plug right there.
We got to get him on this podcast one of these days.
Yes, man.
Ian, if you're watching this, join us one day.
Yes.
We could use a guest. We haven't had one actually since December. With
Wait, don't
Michael
you
Hill.
mean like earlier this season?
I don't even. Let me.
We did not have Michael Hill was our last guest. But
You
let's
sure about Joe Gase?
we had Joey Gase before him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had Joey
Right.
Gase December 23rd. Was Joey Gase on the podcast?
So yeah, you have Harrison Burton, Danny, and Justin has Brad Keselowski, and I have Kyle Busch. Now, very rarely does it ever rain in qualifying.
Well, it does happen.
God forbid it does.
But you know
Our
that-
picks will not make the show.
Oh shit! Come
Or if-
on, no rain, please. That's what I'm hoping now.
Oh my God! If
I
they're
apologize for our language, but let me just say, real quick that if the Allmendinger had in Daytona and Chastain, where they just for some odd reason the cars just simultaneously shut off in qualifying and they had to miss the show, if that happens, who would we pick then? Just as a backup, like a spare tire.
I don't even know.
I would go with Allgaier because he has 2 wins, including last year.
That's Allgaier, but you have to be good. If his car is good, my backup pick, in case they miss the race, my backup pick is Riley Herbst.
That's a very good prediction because Riley Herbst has been at this track so many times. It's like his second home,
Yep.
other than Las Vegas,
Yeah.
which is where Riley Herbst is from. So it makes sense.
But
Um,
don't know a bit weird.
I wonder if he's going to be in that ARCA race on Friday.
I know he's not. The 18's Ty Gibbs.
Oh, okay, that's going to be interesting.
But also, I was gonna say, but if it would be weird if Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski missed the race. You know what I bet you would happen?
What?
Timmy Hill, no, not Timmy Hill. The 13, Chad Pitcher would get kicked out. They put Kyle Busch in the 13.
I would love to see that, but we know what would happen if they missed the show. Social media would become the Boston Tea Party for a few hours.
Or Brad Keselowski.
Boston Tea Party. Very great analogy, Joseph.
Or Brad Keselowski. The reason he would be in is that they're going to switch Mike Harmon's car to a Ford and race my car.
In a utopian world, that would happen.
Brad Keselowski.
Wait, hang on a moment, Joseph. Wait, so Justin, they're switching manufacturers just for this race?
If Brad misses the race and Mike Harmon's like, hey, can you run my car? And run slow?
Black Flags Matter, actually, Darian Gillum.
Yeah.
Make sure you subscribe to him. He interviewed a lot of drivers in his trip to Fontana, including Mike Harmon, and popped the question about Applebee's, which of course, like I don't understand. Like I think we all saw it coming. You know, he was very eager to ask that question.
Well, remember Mike
and I noticed Mike Harmon took it like lightly. You know, he doesn't take it personally.
But remember, Mike Harmon didn't like it when Michael and they called him idiot after practice I remember right before that Indy race, they interviewed Mike Harmon, which was
that was one of the most probably one of the craziest interviews I've seen in a long time. I mean, he's the guy that rarely gets interviewed, if ever.
What happens if Mike Harmon?
Yeah, definitely.
I know what should happen. You know,
he's definitely a character.
Yeah.
Also, he's Armani's favorite driver.
Yeah.
You know, he got his best career finish at Daytona. And his team the other day. I want to plug in my flash drive real quick.
I know what should happen.
What?
At Daytona or Talladega, there should be rain, and the race done the race early with 5 to go. Guess who should win? Mike Harmon should win.
Okay. All right. All jokes aside, let's get into some previews that we have, and we're gonna spend some time now that we just covered all the races. And
also, guys, if you want to watch the ARCA race, watch it on Friday on FS1 if you want to watch it.
Yes.
As round 2 of 20 at Phoenix. Yep. That's the national series. It's gonna be interesting. I'm actually going to pull up something I did over the weekend. If you remember on one of our Skype calls, Justin and Danny actually made those lists with you. So before we get into our headlines and all that, I have 2020 previews and predictions for Formula One, and I mean this is just hypothetical on this list here.
We don't know yet.
Right, but it might be accurate. My list here for my predictions on the top 10 championship predictions I have are top 20, basically the 20 drivers entered. I have Nicholas Latifi, George Russell. This is going from 20th to 1st. Roman Grosjean, Kevin Magnussen, Lance Stroll, Antonio Giovinazzi, Danny Kvyat, Esteban Ocon, Sergio Perez, Kimi Räikkönen, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, Sebastian Vettel, Max Verstappen, Valtteri Bottas, Charles Leclerc, and Lewis Hamilton.
Yep.
That's just a mock list.
We don't know yet, but also know, guys, Vettel is not finishing 20th in points. That will never happen. If it does, Vettel has to do something if he has no points in the season. If he does well...
2021 is going to be determined by his performance in 2020.
But we don't know. 2019 was not good for Vettel.
It was frustrating. It was a trying season for Sebastian Vettel.
But he was actually almost got a race ban. He almost got 12 penalty points, which Raghunathan... Sorry, Mojave Raghunathan fans. He got 1 race ban and still finished. He ran most of the season and still did worse than the part-time drivers, which is kind of sad.
All right. Well, so I think there's a lot to look at here. I think I'm just taking a stroll on this list. We'll talk more about Formula One this weekend, or next podcast after this weekend is over.
So, March 9th, which is next Monday.
Right. And I think it's going to look a lot like last year, but with some specific changes.
The only thing in F1 that's different is a new driver, Nicholas Latifi.
Right, and a new branding of a team, which is now called Scuderia AlphaTauri Honda.
And we also have Zandvoort. They're racing at Zandvoort.
Right, the return to Zandvoort with some new turns in a banked corner, as well as the debut race for Vietnam.
Which that race is going to be at 3:05 a.m. Eastern, which is really early.
I cannot wait for Vietnam. It's going to be a fun race for sure. That's round 3. It's a 21 race tour. Originally, it was going to be 22. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus outbreak, the Chinese Grand Prix at the Shanghai International Circuit has been postponed. Not canceled, but postponed. So we're set to have 22 races, but for now, it's going to be 21. It's going to be interesting, though. I mean, there's a lot of time left, from March 15th to November 29th. They could definitely squeeze in Shanghai if it's all good to go by then.
But we'll have to see. It's just...
In fact, that reminds me, when the Chinese Grand Prix began, it actually, for a short time, was the season finale. So, take it as you will.
But Abu Dhabi was currently, so far, it's still the last race of the season.
Right. So, let's also talk about the 2020 IndyCar season, which is also going to begin on that same weekend as the Formula One Championship is going to begin that same weekend as well. So I'm actually going to pull up a mock list of who I believe is going to finish, where in the championship standings. So I have a top 20 here. So I'm going from 20th to 1st. Alex Palou, Connor Daly, Zach Veach, Marco Andretti, Max Chilton, Jack Harvey, Charlie Kimball, Oliver Askew, Felix Rosenquist, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Graham Rahal, Takuma Sato, Marcus Ericsson, Santino Ferrucci, Colton Herta, Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, and Alexander Rossi. Is that accurate or no?
I don't know. It's just some of them should be higher, some of them should be lower, but
shows you how competitive the series is.
And also, the race is March 15th on Sunday at St. Petersburg. Not Singapore, St. Petersburg. Not to get confused from that one podcast.
Right. Yeah. So, looking at it now, I think we have a very good it's gonna be a fun watch. IndyCar season is a 17 race championship. A few changes. We have the subtraction of Pocono, but the addition, or not the addition, but the return after 11 years to Richmond Raceway in Virginia, which will be a 300 lap distance.
Yep. It's the same as Iowa, 300 laps at Iowa also.
Right.
Same distance. Which is a Saturday night race for Richmond, starting at 8 o'clock Eastern.
So basically there are no changes to the championship except for the dates swapping.
But
what was Pocono is now going to be Richmond.
But not just that. Barber is now race 2. Coda used to, and Coda is now race 4.
Right.
Long Beach stays race 3. And also Canadian IndyCar fans are happy again. They get 10 races on basic cable.
That's great.
Yep, compared to last year, which was really hard to watch IndyCar in Canada.
Right, Sportsnet had a better deal this year, or had a horrible deal last year, but a better one for this year.
Yep. And also about Yeah, so check out IndyCar. It's going to be a good season. But that starts March 15th.
Right. So 2 weeks from now
Yep.
at the streets of St. Petersburg in St. Petersburg, Florida. That's a race I would always want to go to.
But not St. Petersburg, Russia. St. Petersburg, Florida.
Right. And not Singapore, like I said on accident a month ago.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and I know we'll talk more about both of those series next week when we preview their season openers, F1 and IndyCar. So hoping we'll be back in full swing. But here are some of the headlines that we have right now. The Bathurst 6 Hours, which is a race in the middle of April, has a entry list of 68 cars. The maximum they allow is 72 overall, but 68 cars and counting on the entry list. I'd say it ranks third. Bathurst 1000, the Bathurst 12 Hours have all the headlines in the press and the fans, but the Bathurst 6 Hours should not be disregarded, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that race too, and it's kind of like the 24H series. A lot of hatchbacks, touring cars involved, a lot of old models. So be on the lookout for that. Fernando Alonso will attempt the Indy 500 for Arrow Schmidt Peterson McLaren. Remember, he was with McLaren last year and it went unsuccessful. He was the first driver to DNQ from the race last year. He was the first man out.
Yep.
It was a shock that went through this track when he got knocked out the way he did by Kyle Kaiser.
Yeah.
And there are rumors saying that he's going to run some more races in the season, which I think he should, especially since you got to come prepared. You need to learn from it. Now you're joining another team with with new drivers, basically. Pato O'Ward, Oliver Askew. Remember, Pato O'Ward missed the race last year driving for Carlin.
Yep, and the number 31.
And Askew won the Indy Lights support race, which is the Freedom 1 Fridays.
On Indy 500 Carb Day. Yeah, Indy 500 Carb Day that day. And also other than that, for IndyCar, another thing in IndyCar news, James Hinchcliffe will run 3 races for Andretti Autosports driving the number 29 Genesis Honda. He's going to run the Indy Road Course, Indy 500, and the Genesis 600 at Texas, which he's sponsored by Genesis, and also he'll be
working for NBC Sports for the races he won't be in.
Yeah, that's really a good thing that he's also going to run 3 races, which is still a good thing, but he might have possibly right for 2021 if Veach does not perform.
And I'm eyeballing that driver Zach Veach, though. I think that could be the ride that Hinchcliffe might take over. If
like you're seeing Zach Veach, his best finish is 5th. Other than 5th, he's finished in the back.
Right. So let's move on down to the list. Spencer Pigot will attempt the Indy 500 for Rahal Letterman.
Yeah.
Lanigan Racing.
Yep.
With Citroen Robbie Buell Autosport, team owned by former driver Robbie Buell. We'll be working with Rahal and David Letterman.
Yep.
To run not just the Indy 500, but also, I forgot to mention, the Indy Grand Prix.
Yep.
And speaking of the Indy Grand Prix, Scott McLaughlin, who is the 2-time Supercars champion for Roger Penske's team, which is a team that he co-owns with Dick Johnson, where DJR Team Penske is going to be in the Indy Grand Prix, but also considering to run some more races I believe he might attempt the Indy 500. I think he
But
should,
again,
but it's not confirmed.
but we don't even know because he's driving the number 2, and
Right.
people don't understand. That's people are gonna say like in 2019. That's Newgarden's number. Newgarden won the championship, and he's gonna run the number
Right.
1.
You're allowed to run the
Yeah,
number 1 in a
right.
championship defending season if you
The
want.
only-
Some drivers do, some drivers don't.
Dixon didn't do it. He
Right.
still keeps
And you
9.
never see Lewis Hamilton do that in
like-
F1.
But like Newgarden confirmed. I saw a paint scheme, his 2020 paint scheme, and it says 1. So he's running the number 1 again, which is a good thing.
Right. So let's move down this list here that we have. If you haven't heard this Kevin Harvick bounty challenge, which is basically telling Cup drivers you win $100,000 if you can beat Kyle Busch in a Truck Series race.
Yep,
2 drivers actually took action on that bounty.
so far.
Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. So Chase Elliott will run in the Atlanta
In the
race, which is his hometown track in Atlanta Motor Speedway.
driving the 24 truck.
Right, he'll be driving for GMS Racing, and so will Kyle Larson at Homestead Miami Speedway later in March.
Hey, there's another one. Texas, Brendan Poole will drive a second On Point Motorsports truck in the number 29. Right there.
So yeah, add him to the
And-
list.
Oh, remember, Larson's also not running one. So wait, someone, Larson or Elliott, one of those two is also running Kansas.
I think that's Chase Elliott.
Yeah, Chase is also running Kansas, and guess who else is gonna run possibly Kansas?
Denny Hamlin.
Nope, Clint Boyer in the number 75 for Henderson Motorsports.
I feel like we got a whole party ahead for these
Oh.
drivers.
And
Eyeballing one man in particular,
like,
the
but
winningest in the Truck Series,
but
Kyle
like-
Busch.
But like Ian's like, no Cup drivers. Even Crafton said he wants Cup drivers to make it interesting. Even Crafton.
I think it's bringing extra views to the Truck Series. In my
Yeah.
opinion, it's going to make it fun because the Truck Series is competitive already. To
Right.
say that Kyle Busch is having no challenge at all winning a Truck Series race is an understatement, in my opinion.
Yeah, with Kyle, but also like seeing like Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, Clint Boyer are gonna take a shot at it. Also, Brendan Poole. Like we're gonna see a stacked entry lists and see what happens if a Cup driver could beat Kyle Busch and win. Well,
I want to see if Kevin can do it himself too.
but
He used to own the team. Let's go ahead and see what else that we have here. And this is a. Oh, now let's get into the 24. This came out this week. 62 entries overall revealed on the first edition of the entry list for the 24 Hours of Le Mans for 2020. 62 cars overall. We'll get more into this later on because there's a lot of changes to happen later.
Yeah.
But I will say this is going to be a very competitive 24 Hours of Le Mans. Very fun to watch, especially for the LMP2 class. In my opinion, the LMP2 class never disappoints. They're so competitive and tight.
Yeah.
The GT Pro class, of course. I mean, yeah, we know BMW and Ford aren't going to be there, but the tightness between Porsche, Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Corvette never fail to put a good show.
Yep.
Let's see what else here. This is actually bizarre. I don't know if you remember earlier this week, but after one race weekend, James Courtney and Team Sydney parted ways.
What the?
After Adelaide.
I don't even know who. I don't know.
Chris
if it was-
Pither is also rumored to be released from the team. Now, I don't see that happening, but I'm surprised by that.
But James Courtney, is it? I wonder if it was the team or he. We don't know if it was him that decided.
Right. We can't be the ones that decides what
because
happened behind closed doors.
because we're not going to the race shop and going to go sneak. No, we're not gonna fly to Australia.
And if you remember, he won the 2010 championship back 10 years ago and had his prime years. He he had some good stuff going with Waukesha Shredder United and all that. He won the championship with Dick Johnson in 2010. But joined Holden in 2011, and essentially, like,
What? I
you
think,
know,
like,
he had the performance, I'd say, but it just was struggling. 10th in his first 2 seasons in Holden, 11th, 6th, 10th, 11th. Looking down here, he joined the Holden racing team, so he was in factory equipment. But just the thing about James Courtney is it's a lot of changes. You need chemistry, and I don't think he has any right now.
like, I don't even know who's gonna drive that 19.
They don't even have their enduro drivers announced yet. I believe like they're the only team that hasn't
Yeah,
announced who's going to be in there.
like,
But I feel like we might see a Kostecki in there.
but you also never know that the Team Sydney team, that number, the Techno Motorsports Team Sydney by Techno team. That team principal is Jonathan Webb. That is the team principal of that race team.
I have a feeling we're gonna see a Kostecki in there. It might be Brody or Kurt. We'll have to find out.
But what about Jonathan Webb? He ran the Enduros last year. If he runs it again, we might see that again.
Right. I think, in my opinion, if the team made that decision, I think it was too early because he's a veteran driver that has experience.
Joseph, I just figured out that Kurt Kostecki will drive the Enduro races with Bryce Fullwood in the number 2. And Brody will drive the number 99 with Anton De Pasquale.
Right, but the thing is
that's confirmed. That's already confirmed.
Right, that's confirmed, but the Enduro races aren't till later this fall.
Yeah, but that's already confirmed. They already confirmed and signed.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt. I have a feeling we might see a cycle of drivers, though. It should be interesting. Here's another story we have here. Last year in the Nürburgring 24 Hours, Phoenix Racing, the Audi team, won after other factors had issues in the race, including some of the Porsches and the Land Audi with a tire puncture at the beginning of the Nordschleife, which means you're pretty much going to be lapped a few times before you make it around.
Because
if lucky, a right rear tire went down and just ruined them. They won the race, Phoenix Racing Audi. They announced their plans. They will go back out there and attempt to defend for their second consecutive Nürburgring 24 Hours victory in May.
Yeah.
So last year the race was in June, but this year it's going to be on Memorial Day weekend in May. So yeah, I think we have everything covered.
Also was about.
Oh, let's get into the Gen 7 car now.
Oh yeah.
Before we go.
Yeah.
NASCAR announced actually this morning that the 2021 Cup car will have one lug nut. It's something that we've seen in other disciplines of motorsport. So we have 5 lug nuts.
Yeah.
Currently, that's how it's been pretty much.
Not the big ones. We had small ones.
Yeah, these little lug nuts.
But these ones are gonna be
kind of like you see in a street car. But in this one, you have a single lug nut that you see in sports cars, and we see in supercars, and you see this in open wheel racing for years.
Yep.
I think we're in for interesting pit stops because now you must have your A game on in pit road.
Yep.
You have less room to make a mistake than you did with 5 lug nuts. Think about it.
Yeah.
These pit stops will be quicker.
Yeah.
So that's sure going to put on a great show for us next year. I don't know why people complain about it. I think I'm interested. I can't wait to see a change. I mean, I like to see I can't wait to see the 5-speed NASCARs run, how they'll be set up on ovals.
Yeah.
Although I'm still a little skeptical about the sequential shift transmission rather than the traditional H pattern manual transmission that we've seen in other disciplines of racing slowly go away. I'm all for the new. I think it's always good to venture out and see what NASCAR has to offer in the future. I think it's bright. I can't wait for 2021.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I think we have reached the end of this podcast.
Also, I wanted to say about. Also, if you want to, guys, also on Saturday morning, if you want to check out Champ Car Endurance Series Racing, they're racing the 12 hours of VIR on Saturday morning. And also, me and Joseph are not entering a race because we don't have a car to get to Virginia yet. Because
But there is a race in West Palm Beach later this summer.
what
Armani's made that clear.
You and Armani are gonna drive a Chevy Cavalier.
I don't even know.
Hopefully that the car wouldn't break down. And also, guys, check out all the races this weekend. Check them out because you gotta see them.
Yeah, it's always it's a fun race to watch.
And also, yeah.
So I think we've reached the end of this podcast. We'll be back for episode number 49. We have a lot to talk about then, but for now, we are sending off for my colleague Daniel Ford and Justin Hebert. I am Joe Landy Pavlon signing off. Have a nice one.